Hello everyone and welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sophie and this is my YouTube channel. I sadly have a bad hearing loss, so I'm sorry if I sometimes speak too loud or too quietly, but I hope you will find this video interesting anyways. All crime videos are made for educational purposes only, and today we are going to talk about the serial killer, Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker. He is a convicted Mexican-American serial killer, awaiting execution on California's death row at San Quentin State Prison. Richard Ramirez was born as Ricardo Munoz Ramirez on February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. Ramirez may have been influenced into becoming a murderer by his cousin Mike, a Special Forces Vietnam War veteran who boasted of killing and torturing his Vietnamese enemies and showed him Polaroid pictures of his victims. Ramirez was present the night Mike shot and killed his own wife. On March 17, 1985, Ramirez attacked 22-year-old Maria Hernandez outside her home. He shot her before entering her house. Inside was Daily Okazaki, age 34, whom Ramirez immediately shot and killed. Hernandez survived. The bullet had hit off the keys she held in her hands as she lifted them to protect herself. Within an hour of killing Okazaki, Ramirez struck again in Monterrey Park. He jumped 30-year-old Tsai Lian Yu and pulled her out of her car onto the road. He shot her several times and fled. A policeman found her still breathing, but she died before the ambulance arrived. The two attacks occurring on the same day took over media attention and in turn caused panic and fear among the public. The news media dubbed the attacker, who was described as having long curly hair, bulging eyes, and white-spaced, rotting teeth. On March 27, Ramirez shot Vincent Sazara, age 64, and his wife Maxine, age 44. Mrs. Sazara's body was mutilated with several stab wounds and a T-carving on her left breast. Their bodies were discovered by their son Peter. The autopsy determined that the mutilations were post-mortem. Ramirez left footprints in the flowers' beds, which the police photographed and cast. This was virtually the only evidence that the police had at the time. Bullets found at the scene were matched to those found at previous attacks, and the police now realized that a serial killer was on the loose. By this time, a multi-county police investigation was in operation. The law enforcement agencies worked through the month of April with no additional attacks by Ramirez. 2 months after killing the Sazara couple, Ramirez attacked a Chinese couple, Harold Wu, age 66, who was shot in the head, and his wife, Jean Wu, age 63. She was punched, bound, and then violently raped. For unknown reasons, Ramirez decided to let her live. Ramirez's attacks were now in full throttle. He left behind more clues to his identity and was now named the Night Stalker by the media. Survivors of his attacks provided the police with a description of a tall Hispanic and long dark-haired man. On May 29, 1985, Ramirez attacked Melville Keller, 83, and her disabled sister Blanche Wolfe, 80, beating each with a hammer. Ramirez attempted to rape Keller but failed. Using lipstick, he drew pentagrams on Keller's thigh and on the wall in the bedroom. Blanche survived the attack. The next day, Ruth Wilson, 41, was bound, raped, and sodomized by Ramirez while her 12-year-old son was locked in a closet. Ramirez slashed Wilson once and then bound her and her son together and left. In June and July, 3 more women were killed. 2 had their throats slit, 1 was beaten to death, and all 3 had their homes invaded in the process. On July 5, Whitney Bennett, aged 16, survived being beaten with a tire iron. On July 7, Linda Fortuna, 63, was attacked, and Ramirez tried to rape her but failed. On July 20, he again struck twice. In Sun Valley, he shot and killed a 32-year-old man, Shitat Asawaham, and his wife Sakima, 29, was beaten and forced to perform oral intercourse. Ramirez then collected valuables and proceeded to leave. Later in the same day, a Glendale couple, Maxon Keating, 66, and his wife Leela, also 66, were shot and their corpses mutilated. On August 6, Ramirez shot both Christopher Peterson, 38, and his wife Virginia, 27, in the head. Miraculously, they both survived. On August 8, Ramirez attacked a Diamond Bar couple, fatally shooting Ahmed Zia, 35, before raping, sodomizing, and forcing Zia's wife, Sue Q, 28, to perform fellatio on him. The description of their attacker fit the previous ones given for the Night Stalker. Ramirez then left the Los Angeles area, and on August 17 he shot to death a 66-year-old man in San Francisco, also shooting and beating his wife. The wife survived her wounds and was able to identify her attacker as the Night Stalker killer. The next big break in the case came on August 24, 1985. Ramirez traveled 50 miles south of Los Angeles to Mission Viejo and broke into the Mediterranean Village apartment of Bill Carnes, 29, and his fiancée, Ines Erickson, 27. Ramirez shot Carnes in the head and raped Erickson. He demanded she swear her love for Satan, and afterwards he forced her to perform oral intercourse on him. He then tied her and left. Erickson struggled to the window and saw the car Ramirez was driving. She was able to give a description of both Ramirez and his orange Toyota station wagon. A teenager later identified the car from news reports and wrote down half its license plate number. The stolen car was found on August 28, and police were able to obtain one fingerprint that was on the mirror of the vehicle. The print belonged to one Richard Munoz Ramirez, who was described as a 25-year-old drifter from Texas with a long rap sheet that included many arrests for traffic and illegal drug violations. 2 days later, his mugshots were broadcast on national television and printed on the cover of every major newspaper in California. The next day, Ramirez was identified, surrounded, and severely beaten by an angry mob in East Los Angeles as he was trying to steal a car. Police had to break up the mob to prevent them from killing Ramirez. Jury selection for the case started on July 22, 1988, and on September 20, 1989, he was found guilty of 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. During the penalty phase of the trial on November 7, 1989, he was sentenced to die in California's gas chamber. The trial of Richard Ramirez was one of the most difficult and longest criminal trials in American history. Nearly 1,600 prospective jurors were interviewed. More than 100 witnesses testified, and while a number of witnesses had a difficult time recalling certain facts 4 years after the crimes, others were quite certain of the identity of Richard Ramirez. On August 3rd, 1988, the Los Angeles Times reported that some jail employees overheard Ramirez planning to shoot the prosecutor with a gun, which Ramirez intended to have smuggled into the courtroom. Consequently, a metal detector was installed outside of the courtroom and intensive searches were conducted on people entering. On August 14, the trial was interrupted because one of the jurors, Phyllis Singletary, did not arrive to the courtroom. Later that day, she was found shot to death in her apartment. The jury was terrified. They could not help but wonder if Ramirez had somehow directed this event from inside his prison cell, and if he could reach other jury members. However, Ramirez was not responsible for Singletary's death. She had been shot and killed by her boyfriend, who later killed himself with the same weapon in a hotel. The alternative juror who replaced Singletary was too frightened to return to her home. By the time of the trial, Ramirez had fans who were writing him letters and paying him visits. Since 1985, freelance magazine editor Doreen Leoy wrote him nearly 75 letters during his incarceration. In 1988, he proposed to her, and on October 3rd, 1996, they were married in California's San Quentin State Prison. Leoy has stated that she will commit suicide when Ramirez is executed. On August 7, 2006, his first round of state appeals ended unsuccessfully when the California Supreme Court upheld his convictions and death sentence. On September 7, 2006, the California Supreme Court denied his request for a rehearing. So what do you think? Is it fair that Ramirez is going to be executed? This is a very bizarre case. I hope you enjoyed listening to it and see you in the next case.